Okay, here we go. Another day, another mini lecture. And this mini lecture is continuing to look at our essay writing practices. So we'll call this essay writing level 2. Yesterday we talked about the structure or the format of a traditional compare and contrast essay, which is one of the most common essays that you will be asked to write. Today we're going to look at another format or another style of essay, and this is called an analysis essay. So this is actually a type of essay that we're going to attempt to use for our novel, The Alchemist. Now, the reason that I've selected this format is because compare and contrast essays obviously work best when you're looking at a novel or looking at two pieces of literature that you can kind of find the similarities and the differences of, or if you're just looking at a singular novel. Um, Compare and contrast is a little bit more effective when you have a wider cast of characters, because then traditionally you'd be comparing two of the characters. But one of the things you'll notice about The Alchemist is it's very much focused just on our main character, Santiago. So the compare and contrast format doesn't work particularly well with that novel. So instead, what we'll do is we will analyze some of the story elements that we find within um, the story, The Alchemist. And so it's kind of like taking our three window lens paragraph and expanding it out to an essay length. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So when we talk about analyzing stories, this another way to discuss it would be to call it a literary analysis, because any novel, any book or story is part of literature. And so at the university level, this would be called literary analysis. So we will follow the same paragraph order that we discussed yesterday. So there'll be an introductory paragraph, main body paragraph 1, main body paragraph 2, main body paragraph 2, 3, and a conclusion paragraph. So it's the same 5 paragraph structure, which most essays will be at least 5 paragraphs in their structure. So as I just mentioned in our intro slide, essentially what we're doing here is we're going to expand on that 3 window lens approach. So what that means is, as you're reading, you need to be considering what types of story elements are kind of jumping out of the novel. So yeah, this is the exact point. You have to select 3 story elements that stand out, that you can find enough evidence to discuss, and that you feel comfortable using citations from the novel to support. And then we'll move into our writing process. So once you've kind of done the mental accounting and decided, okay, I want to talk about these 3 different aspects of our story, then you need to start your writing process. So the writing process, again, to remember, uh, we won't have to worry about topic selection, because you're all going to be working with the same essay prompt for this particular essay. So topic selection is usually step 1. Step 2 is going to be our brainstorming. This is where you kind of try to throw down as many of your ideas on the page as possible, and then you categorize them. That's step 3, kind of the organization of your ideas. And then you traditionally would move into the first draft. Then you would let it have some soak time. Then you would come back with revisions, and then you would finally step 7, or sometimes people call it step 8 if you're including a research step, to submit your final essay. The one other thing that I would say is that because we already know what we're going to be doing, as you're reading, and I think this is also going to be in the next slide, as you're reading, you should be actively reading, and you should be taking notes about what parts of the story you can reapply to your writing. Okay, so active reading supports essay writing. There you go. The next slide is nicely linked into what I was just talking about. So you need to be aware and mindful. This is a really powerful word, mindful. It just means kind of being switched on. Which is also associated to the growth mindset that we learned about in Carol Dweck's TED Talk about Not Yet. So you need to be mindful while you are reading. And what this means is that you should be taking notes of the story elements as you are reading The Alchemist. So you should have a little notebook, or you should be using post-it notes. So when you see a metaphor, or when you see a symbol, or when you see something that is thematically important, you make a note of it in your active reading log or on your post-it notes and slap it right into the novel. And what that'll mean is that when you come back to do your essay, you'll already be prepared to start your citations. There you go, track page numbers for citations. Also, while you're reading, you should be thinking about your essay as you read, just kind of, and that's that mindfulness approach. You know that you're reading with a purpose. You're reading to enjoy the story, you're reading to understand the story, but you also know you're going to have to write this big essay at the end. So you need to be switched on, and you need to kind of keep that in your thinking process. What does this have to do with what I'm going to write about? And you might be thinking, okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to write about yet, but the end of this presentation will include your writing prompt. So from today, you can start your planning process, your organization process, your brainstorming process for this essay. And we'll also be opening up a new section on the discussion board where we can just talk about together as a class the different story elements that we're seeing in the novel. So now you should be on about, I think we're almost page 72 or something like that, up around there. The book's around 170 pages, so we're still within the kind of the first third of the book, but you might even want to track back and look at a few sections that you've already read to be able to track the story elements that you decide you want to talk about. Even now, your mind should be turning, the wheels should be turning, right? And you should be thinking, what story elements have jumped out at me from the novel so far? Okay, so perfect. So let's talk about some of the story elements that we've encountered in The Alchemist and how our thought process might develop. So, as I've identified, we will be writing an analysis essay for this novel. So from here, your reading process is going to be tweaked slightly, right? Because you're going to be actively reading, and you're going to be trying to target those story elements that you think you can write an essay about. So again, which of the elements are standing out? So here's an example of the format. So again, this shows you, this just goes through the laying out of the intro plus your thesis. We'll talk about thesis writing later this week. We'll have a specific lecture about that, because writing your thesis is arguably the most important part of your essay, because it sets up everything that you want to talk about, right? So it's kind of the heart, it's the beating heart of your essay. There you go. That's a nice metaphor, right? So then you might move into main body paragraph 1, which I'm going to end up calling them MVP, MVP1, MVP2, MVP3. And you might say, hey, you know what I've realized is that already we've seen that our main character, Santiago, has moved from southern Spain, the Andalusian area of southern Spain, to Morocco, to Tarifa. And we can predict that he's going to continue, right? Because we know we've identified from our look at the even just the cover of the novel shows that map on it, right? That's kind of a strong foreshadowing hint, even just in the cover. So we can predict that the settings of this novel are going to continue to change, and we might write a paragraph on how important the setting is to the message, or to the development of the story, or to the continuation of the story. So we might want to make a paragraph about that. You could alternately, like, so you'll notice that this first paragraph is a level 1 element, right? So alternately, you might want to talk about characters. You might want to talk about how important the characters are to developing the story of the alchemist, right? So normally you'll want to put a level 1 element in paragraph 1. Then main body paragraph 2, you're going to step up to talk about a level 2 element, obviously. So I've selected symbolism because, as we'll see in the story, things hold symbolic power. You could write about the dialogue between the characters, because dialogue is another level 2, one of our level 2 story elements. You could write about omens, right? So these are things that are all established by Coelho as being very significant within the tale of the alchemist. So a level 2 story element should be discussed in the main body paragraph 2. Then in main body paragraph 3, I'll want you to attack discussing one of the major themes that stood out throughout the novel for you, okay? So, and then obviously I haven't mentioned it here, it's just a slight oversight, but the final paragraph would be the conclusion paragraph. And as this topic develops, our essay topic, I will actually model the writing of my version of this essay. So I will actually do a mini lecture about the intro and thesis, do a mini lecture about MBP1, do a mini lecture about MBP2, and so on and so forth until I've demonstrated the entire novel, or sorry, the entire essay. Okay, so on that note, this is a really good time for us to look at the actual essay prompt. This is your actual essay writing prompt for this project. Okay, so I'm just going to read through it and wrap this up. So your task is to write an analysis essay about The Alchemist. This essay will be written in the APA format, which means that it will be double-spaced, it will use APA citation support, and follow a structured essay pattern. The pattern, we've already discussed that 5-paragraph pattern. Each main body paragraph should have at least 2 to 3 citations that provide supporting evidence to your main ideas. So we've practiced this already, guys, right? We've practiced our paraphrasing, we've practiced APA citations. You're comfortable with both integral and non-integral citations. Those are the tools that I want you to use for you to discuss the 3 main body topics that you select. The length of the essay should be between 600 and 900 words. I did a quick kind of calculation based on the paragraph lengths that I showed you in our first essay mini lecture yesterday. We will be working on this writing project over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and it will account for 20% of your final grade. So this is the most significant component of your grade. Basically, the essay itself is worth the same amount as the 2 learning checks, which we've already completed. So it's a big project, you guys, which means we're going to put a lot of work into this, but there will be time, and I will be accepting your first drafts of each of the paragraphs, and I will give you feedback on those drafts. So you'll be able to hopefully take the feedback I give you and upgrade the level of your writing to polish off your final project. It should be at least a 3rd draft, okay, with lots of soak time in between. And proper APA citations to support your evidence, to support your main ideas. Okay, so here we go, guys. This is really exciting. We've been building our whole semester towards this. It's time for us to jump into essay writing.